Return of the Mount Hua Sect, Chapter 148. Anyone who touches my stuff is dead. These young kids. The first of the three killers of Wailing Ghost, Shadowless Wailing Ghost, stared at Mount Hua's disciples with red eyes. Without any skills, you go around aiming for precious things because you have faced nothing in life. So this old man will kill you without pain. Had it not been for the sword tomb, he wouldn't have even thought about harming the disciples of Mount Hua. Even if Mount Hua had fallen, it still had a name that was greater than any small or medium sect. It wasn't a wise choice to go against such people. But this was the sword tomb. It was a place where outsiders couldn't reach nor see inside. Even if someone died here, the culprit couldn't be found, so he could use his hand as he pleased with peace of mind. The Beggars Union people next to Mount Hua were a bit annoying, but if they were also killed, a word about it wouldn't reach the outside world. It's always good to have one less competitor. He licked his lip, and his pole blade sparkled blue. You young ones were greedy for nothing. They will start regretting everything once their flesh is pierced. The younger brothers of the man also took out their weapons and threatened the disciples of Mount Hua. But why are they like that? The three killers of Wailing Ghost. They were a notorious group in the Honam area whose name could make crying children stop. No matter how well known they were in the past, the disciples of Mount Hua and the Beggars Union wouldn't dare to lift their weapons against such a notorious group. However, the kids in front of them were calm, and there were even a sullen reaction on their faces. Since they are young, they must be scared. Hey, Yunjong sighed and opened his mouth. I understand what you mean, but you need to start thinking about things again. What? Shadowless Wailing Ghost eyes opened wide. You arrogant bastard! No, it isn't like that. I don't know. Do whatever you want. Let's see if you will keep saying that when we tear open that mouth of yours. It was then. Coo! Suddenly, there was a loud roar next to him, and the Shadowless Wailing Ghost eyes went round. What? A stranger appeared next to him. Then what of my younger brother? What happened to the brother who was standing there? His gaze descended downwards. His younger brother was wriggling under the foot of the stranger who had appeared suddenly. Seeing his younger brother with his limbs twisted in a strange manner, he was angry. He lifted his gaze to once again look at the man who was crushing his younger brother with his feet, and he saw Chongmyung, who had a weird expression on his face. How can a person have such a grumpy face in such a situation? Just as he was about to speak, Chongmyung spoke first. Who are these guys? Was he talking about them? Who? Baekchun, who was watching it, sighed and said, They're the three killers of Wailing Ghost, a group down in Honam. Chongmyung's head tilted. 3 ages? Does that mean he wanted to be 3 times older? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't matter. Crack, crack. Chongmyung tilted his head left and right. Let's strike them down first and start our journey. Baekchun narrowed his eyes as he looked at the man who was going to be buried right at the start of the tomb itself. It isn't even a great start. At least based on the group's name, he expected the man to be scarier than a tiger. It was no exaggeration to say that their actions were known throughout the land, and it was truly moving to see them beaten like local thugs, dragged along, and then thrown into the corner. Where did such idiots even come from? He didn't seem to be in a good mood, and they were well-known people, but Baekchun shook his head instead of trying to explain. He knew clearly that there was a huge difference between Chongmyung's standards and the standards of other well-known people. You jumped down on them without knowing a thing and are now going to waste time? Chongmyung smiled at Yunjong's words. It won't take much time. Ugh, you're such a poisonous bastard. Yunjong shook his head. Mount Hua's disciples had come down here very slowly by using their swords to not fall down. It was the same with the others. Rather than jumping in and facing a huge impact when landing on the ground, it was better to use swords to slow down the speed and land slowly. But that crazy bastard jumped without a thought and trampled on a person. The others? Look. Baekchun pointed to something. A gate at the end of the stone chamber was wide open. There seems to be just one way. At least, the way out of here must be that one. Is that so? Chongmyung glanced at the gate and then at the floor. Then, as if he had found something, he began to collect the pieces which fell on the floor. What are you doing? This looks like a gate. So why? Gather them. Chongmyung, who gathered all the pieces, tried to recreate the original shape of the gate and frowned. This is... 2 swords were aimed diagonally crossing each other, and in between there was a large inscription that had sword tomb on it. So straightforward, isn't it? Chongmyung had a bitter smile. Why? Is something wrong? Chongmyung shrugged and asked Yunjong. Who came up with the word sword tomb? That... maybe Yaksun? He was giving a name to his own tomb? Isn't that one bad hobby to have? It felt weird when Chongmyung put it like that. Normally, names for such things are given after the tomb itself is created. The word sword tomb was the name of the untraceable seizing sword's tomb. But here, it said sword tomb at the entrance. To a tomb that was never found, it has a nameplate that says sword tomb. Yunjong frowned. Then did the seizing sword himself give the name sword tomb to his tomb and spread it to the world? It could be. Why? Well... Chongmyung shrugged his shoulders. How do we know what a man who lived 200 years ago thought? Chongmyung turned his head while holding the pieces he joined. The only door out of the stone chamber came into view. That's true. Whether this is the tomb of Yaksun or not, the people who made this tomb aren't ordinary. Everyone nodded. To dig a hole this deep and create a stone chamber this size, they must have had unimaginable ability to do that. Don't relax. This is no ordinary tomb. While the disciples of Mount Hua were in their thoughts, Hongdae-gwang approached Chongmyung. Mount Hua's divine dragon. What? What do we do now? Looking at the identities of those who came before us, this place is flooding with powerful people. It won't be easy to get inside with all of them. In my opinion, it wouldn't be bad to find suitable people and try to make a group. First of all, wouldn't it be better to create a situation where we fully understand the sword tomb and to check if something more exists? Chongmyung's face darkened. People who want to share information or the treasure wouldn't even come here like this. It wasn't wrong. Chongmyung smiled and continued. And there is no need for us to step forward either. Things must have already started. If any of the people who came in have brains, they would have already united. Right. Hongdae-gwang nodded his head. There were various people inside. They must have been at odds on the outside, but now that they were inside, they had no choice but to join forces. Because the Wudang sect entered first. The Wudang sect's name and fame. No matter how many more famous people came in, they would be like fireflies in front of Wudang's name. And wasn't it common for warriors to group up and go against the lone wolves? There was no way that those who entered didn't have that thought running through their minds. If so, Hongdae-gwang, who glanced at Chongmyung, trembled. Chongmyung was looking at the end of the chamber with an evil smile. Wudang's power will be drained without them even knowing that the Imugi is aiming for them from behind. Judging by the expression on Chongmyung's face, it seemed like things were going according to plan. Look here, Mount Hua's divine dragon. Huh? I know what you are thinking, but we need to get in and get the things we want. Otherwise, it'll be like being chased by dogs. If we want to move, it has to be now. Yes, of course. Chongmyung looked at the disciples of Mount Hua. Let's go. Okay. The disciples of Mount Hua followed Chongmyung without another word. It doesn't seem like the place was made with good intentions, so don't fall behind. We know. Hong Dae-gwang glanced at Chongmyung and then went close to the disciples of Mount Hua. It was the same with the disciples of the Beggars Union. At that sight, Chongmyung smacked Hong Dae-gwang. Where are you going? We are trying to help. Beggars help? I have never once heard such words in my life. It isn't like that I'm chasing anything. I'm just here. Let's help each other and live. When we go out, I'll be of big help, you know. I'm Hong Dae-gwang. Hong Dae-gwang. At that, Chongmyung smiled. Help me freeze to death? Hong Dae-gwang scratched his head. He wasn't in a situation where he could go his own way, but the monster in front of him didn't seem to like him. There's something I can do. Do? Chongmyung opened his mouth. Huh? The normal plan for Chongmyung was to create some kind of fitting situation that would benefit Mount Hua. The Beggars Union was a body that handled information. The power of information was essential for Mount Hua, which was growing. Information was meaningless if Mount Hua wanted to live in the same way. But in Gangho, where the strong survive, information had much more value. So, he thought that getting to know them and using them to gain information was good. He put aside the bad feelings he had. But when he thought till then, something else popped into his mind. I almost forgot why I felt bad for a moment there. Chongmyung opened his lips, looking at the man. Branch leader. Huh? What kind of position do you have in the Beggars Union? Well, even if you search the entire world, the number of those who overpass me won't exceed 100. Then can you catch the people under you? Under me? I can grab anyone by their toes. Is that so? Chongmyung turned his head, and Hong Dae-gwang, who saw that face, flinched. Chongmyung's eyes were burning with something. I have something for you to do. Please catch a beggar for me. What? There's a beggar named Zhongpal in Wuhan. For you to get out of here, my condition is that you bring that one in front of me. Zhongpal? It isn't that difficult. What is it? What relationship do you have? I was blessed by him. A very deep grace was shown to him. It was the beggar who gave Chongmyung the most intense shock and beating when he was reborn. Chongmyung snorted and said, Grace should be repaid. It wasn't known what happened, but it looked like a certain beggar had pinched the nose of a tiger. Hong Dae-gwang could only express his deep condolences in advance to the beggar.